You're listening to The Jacob Valk Show. He's breaking down the latest and greatest in sports as only he can. Follow him on Twitter at RealJacobValk. Here he is, Jacob Valk.
Hello, sports fans! Welcome to another edition of the Jacob Valk Show. I am Jacob Valk, and sports are back. Basketball and baseball on the same day. Hallelujah! Meaningful baseball and meaningful basketball the first time this year. It's so great to be able to talk about games that actually matter. It's so great to be breaking down these games that we just finished watching. As much as I love talking about sports history, the reason I started this show was because I wanted an outlet that wasn't Twitter to give my opinions on the latest and greatest in sports. Yes, greatest is in there also, but latest comes first. It's so great to be able to talk about yesterday's two NBA games with you, and then on Monday I'm going to break down all the NHL games. Oh my goodness gracious. It's so good to be back. Before I get into the Jazz-Pelicans game, though, I do want to talk about Major League Baseball going with 7-inning doubleheaders as a way to make up missed games. I hit on it yesterday. I'm not going to spend too much time on it today. All I'm going to say is we really need to just cancel this season. Alright, if this is what we need to do to get a season done, and a shortened one at that, a season that's been shortened by 102 games, to change one of the fundamental tenets of baseball, please, let's just cancel the season. It's not worth it. What you're doing now, it's not worth it. You're going to have such an asterisk. Every single stat from this season needs to have an asterisk on it. If Mike Trout only wins one World Series in his whole career, and it happens to come this year, his career will be a failure when you look at it through the lens of postseason success. Same thing with Bryce Harper. Same thing with Aaron Judge. Same thing with Nolan Arenado. This is an absolute disgrace. Rob Manfred has ruined this sport. Tony Clark hasn't helped matters either. I'm telling you, I don't even want to watch baseball this year. I mean, I'm going to because I love the Yankees. They're my favorite team. I have a Yankee t-shirt on and Yankee sweats on. I love them more than anything. They're my favorite team. But other than that, I can't get excited about it. Even the playoffs I'm going to have a tough time getting excited about. This is a farce, the likes of which we've never seen before when it comes to sports. And I'm ashamed to be even a small part of it as a baseball fan. Alright, now it's time to talk about the NBA games. Obviously, I'm going to start with Jazz-Pelicans. And The NBA couldn't have restarted this season any better. From managing its coronavirus situation to these 2 games. Both of the games were 2-point games. They were exciting throughout. If you were a true basketball fan, you were into those games hard. And was there some rust? Absolutely. More on the Pelicans side than there was on the Jazz side, I thought. But the Jazz weren't fantastic. I've seen them play better. Obviously, they were without Bojan Bogdanovic. He's going to be out with a wrist injury for the whole restart. We knew that already. It has nothing to do with the coronavirus. He just needed surgery on his right wrist. But he's a big part of what they do. He's a fantastic scorer for them. 20 points per game on 45% from the field and 41.5% from 3. The fact that the Jazz were able to overcome him being out is a really impressive sign. And what else is impressive is how they won. By that I mean they had 6 players score in double digits. Ingles had 13, O'Neal had 12, nearly had a double-double, he also had 9 rebounds. Gobert had a double-double, 14 and 12. Conley and Mitchell each had 20. Clarkson had 23 off the bench. He was the high man in this game, tied with Brandon Ingram. The fact that the Jazz were able to get this well-rounded of a scoring attack was really, really impressive. And this is what they do. They just have scorers. Any one of these guys, with the exception of O'Neal. O'Neal's more of a defensive guy. But if you replace O'Neal with Bogdanovic, that's how the Jazz have won games. By putting scorers on the floor. You don't know who to defend. They have a fantastic offense. I love watching them play. And I'm not trying to take anything away from their defense. They're one of the better defensive teams in the NBA. Gobert is great in the low post. Royce O'Neal is a great defender. Donovan Mitchell's an underrated defender. They did a really good job of limiting Brandon Ingram. I understand that Ingram had 23 points and he was by far and away the Pelicans' best player, but he shot 7 for 20 from the field. 2 for 8 from beyond the arc. 7 of those 23 points came from free throws. I've seen Brandon Ingram play better than that. I'm not saying Ingram played bad. I'm just saying he's had better performances. The Jazz were also able to win this game without shooting the ball well from beyond the arc. Again, Bogdanovic being out, a huge reason for that. The Jazz shot 8 for 34 from beyond the arc, 24%. The Pelicans weren't much better, 11 for 31. That's 36%. Royce O'Neal was 2 for 7. He never should have taken those shots. Mike Conley, 2 for 7. Jordan Clarkson, 1 for 8. But the Jazz adapted. At the end of the day, scorers score. There's only so much you can do to stop them. Whether it was penetrating, whether it was mid-range jumpers, the Jazz found ways to score. And the thing that you really liked seeing as a Jazz fan was Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell playing well together. Mitchell was finding Gobert in the low post on driving dishes. I wasn't sure how they were going to play together. It's widely believed that Gobert gave Mitchell the coronavirus. Remember, Gobert was the one who was tapping all the microphones, and then he was later diagnosed with the coronavirus. That's what brought this whole thing to a halt. And there were rumors that Gobert and Mitchell had tension. One of them was going to be traded. Well, they got along last night. Their chemistry looked really, really good. That's a great sign for Jazz fans. And when you look at it from the Pelicans side of things, obviously they would have won if Zion had played more than 15 minutes. He was on a minutes restriction. There were rumors that he wasn't going to play at all. Gentry got him in for 15 minutes and he dominated. 13 points, 6 for 8 from the field. And that was it. That was all he could handle. You know, the Pelicans are going to need to find ways to win without Zion if they want to make it into the playoffs. And Ingram was good. Not great, but not terrible. Jrue Holiday did Jrue Holiday things, played well defensively, had 20 points, turned the ball over a lot, though. I mean, that can be chalked up to rust, but it is something worth noting. JJ Redick was insane. Again, scorers are going to score, and that's JJ Redick. Despite all of that, the Pelicans had a real chance of winning, but Derek Favors and Lonzo Ball were abysmal. Favors played 28 minutes. He only had 3 shots. He made 1 layup. That was it. He played well defensively. Why couldn't he do that for the Nets? But he wasn't good. And Lonzo was abysmal. He shot 2 for 13 from the field. Lonzo, you're not a scorer. You'll probably never be a scorer. That's not a bad thing. Your ceiling is Rajon Rondo. That's okay. And I'm not talking current day Rajon Rondo. I'm talking in his prime NBA champion Rajon Rondo. You cannot take 13 shots. Especially when you're not hitting them. He had the worst performance by far yesterday. You want to chalk it up to rust, you can. But look, Lonzo needs to realize what his role on the team is. And that's a distributor. That's all he is. You don't want him shooting a lot. You want him finding these minuscule lanes to get the ball to guys who can actually score consistently. Ball and Favors are the seminal reasons why the Pelicans lost that game. Moving on now to the Battle of LA, Clippers-Lakers. Great, great, great game. You have 2 of the best teams in the NBA going at it. Superstars galore. I thought the NBA did a great job with the way they scheduled opening day. You have the Jazz, who started this whole thing. Gobert brought it to a halt. He scored the first basket in the restart. How's that for poetic justice? They were going up against the Pelicans, one of the most exciting young teams in the NBA, and then Clippers-Lakers. Superstars galore. Not having Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell really, really hurt the Clippers here. Lou Williams obviously still quarantining because of his jaunt to Atlanta to get some of those delicious strip club chicken wings. My God, what an idiot. And Montrezl Harrell isn't even in the bubble. He left because of a personal emergency. So God only knows when he's going to come back. If those two guys had played, the Clippers would have won this game easily. Their bench without them was atrocious. You cannot have Joakim Noah and Amir Coffey playing meaningful minutes for you. Noah was okay, but he wasn't great. And I never heard of Amir Coffey. Shamet was inept. Beverly played well, but he was really the only bench guy for the Clippers to play well. For the Clippers, this really boiled down to how much could Kawhi and Paul George do. And give them credit. They played well enough to win. Both of them were great. Kawhi dropped 28 points. Paul George dropped 30. I thought George was head and shoulders better than Kawhi last night. From a Clippers standpoint, if you want to look at things positively, it's good that their two superstars, Kawhi and George, are still showing that chemistry that makes them so special. But obviously, they got the loss. And the reason they got the loss was because Anthony Davis was insane. He dominated the whole game, especially the first quarter. Every play, it was get the ball down low to Davis and let him go to work. He made Zubac look like minced meat. And Montrezl Harrell, even though he's undersized, would have done a much better job of guarding AD. Another reason why the Clippers miss him. Davis was by far and away the best player on the court yesterday, regardless of team. Jazz, Pelicans, Clippers, Lakers, it doesn't matter. Davis was the best. This game really boiled down to a battle of the Robins. And there's nothing wrong with that. We keep forgetting that Anthony Davis is a top 10 caliber player in this league. I don't know if he would actually be in my top 10, but I'd certainly have to think about it. And Paul George would probably be top 15, maybe top 20. It was really interesting to see that was how that game shook out. Kyle Kuzma really impressed me. I like Kuzma a lot. I think he gets a bad rap. I understand he's playing in LA. There's a lot of pressure there. You know, you're playing with LeBron, and yeah, he's been behind the 8 ball for a while, but I really like him. I think he can be the third best player on a championship-winning team. The people killing the Lakers, even before the pause, were saying, oh, they don't have a big three, who's their third guy? It can't be Kuzma, he's not that good. Look, Kuzma isn't on the same level as LeBron and AD, but he's really good. He's a talented player. Was picked with a Brooklyn Nets pick. He was sent over, along with Brook Lopez, as a draft pick for D'Angelo Russell and Timofey Mozgov. I've had an eye on Kuzma throughout his career. I really like him. He's just a really, really good player. But I'm saving the best for last in LeBron. And what's going to get a lot of hype is what he did that isn't going to show up in the box score. He directed the Lakers' offense really well. Directed the defense insanely well. And a great play at the end of the game. He misses the floater, gets his own rebound, and puts it back. That was a fantastic play. Every AAU coach should show that clip to his team. as a prime example for why you never give up on the play. The second LeBron let that shot go, I think he knew it wasn't going in. So everyone was just standing around watching. LeBron kept going. And he was able to get the putback that ultimately won the Lakers the game. Again, fantastic play. But I'll tell you, I wasn't 100% impressed with him. He missed a lot of shots. 6 for 19 from the field. 2 for 7 from beyond the arc. He didn't get to the line a lot. He only attempted 2 free throws. Granted, he made them both. But he only finished with 16 points. Now, he had 11 rebounds and 7 assists. I'm not saying he played bad, but he wasn't great. But that shouldn't scare you too much if you're a Lakers fan. They found a way to win even without him playing great. Yeah, the Lakers would have lost if Lou Williams and Montrezl Harrell were playing, but they got the win. That's all that matters. LeBron found other ways to contribute. That's what makes LeBron LeBron. I wouldn't worry too much if I was a Lakers fan, but I would keep an eye on it going forward. Believe it or not, there actually are some NFL signings that I want to talk about. And I'll start with Curtis Riley latching on with the Steelers. Riley played well for the Raiders last year. According to Pro Football Focus, last year he had a 67.3 overall grade. The thing with Riley is he can't start. He started with the Giants in 2018, and he really wasn't good. 58.1 overall grade, according to PFF, but you know what? That grade should have been a lot lower. But he's going to be a backup in Pittsburgh. He'll be backing up Minkah Fitzpatrick and Terrell Edmonds. The Steelers could have added some safety depth. No one knows anything about Jordan Dangerfield. Pro Football Focus likes him, but he hasn't played a lot. God only knows what you're going to get from Marcus Allen. It's a good move by the Steelers in bringing in a quality backup safety. They obviously value the position, having drafted Terrell Edmonds in the first round a few years ago and making the big trade for Minkah Fitzpatrick. I mean, if you watch him play, that goes without saying, but if you don't, and you're just observing from afar, I'll tell you, the Steelers really value the safety position. They always have. Guys like Troy Polamalu, and even if you want to go further back, Andy Russell. This is a good move for the Steelers. I like it a lot. Moving on now to the Falcons signing Darqueze Dennard. He had a deal lined up with the Jaguars in the early portion of free agency, but it fell through. God only knows why. He's remained in free agency ever since, and he's been one of the best free agents available. It's kind of funny, the guys who are getting the most publicity are guys like Jadeveon Clowney and Logan Ryan and Devontae Freeman. Darqueze Dennard deserves to be mentioned too. He's a really good corner. Has been for a long time. According to Pro Football Focus, last year he had a 72.2 overall grade. The worst year he's ever had, according to PFF, was 2016, when he had a 59.8 overall grade. And you know what? He wasn't playing a lot that year. The Falcons needed cornerback help desperately. They drafted A.J. Terrell in the first round in what I thought was a huge reach. I know Nick liked Terrell. I was a lot lower on him. Other than that, they really didn't get a lot of production from their secondary. Bill D. Ray Wilson was good, not great. DeMonte Kazee was good, not great. Isaiah Oliver was dreadful. Kendall Sheffield was dreadful. Losing Brian Poole really hurt them last year. And Denard is going to do a really good job with the Falcons. This makes a ton of sense. I love this move. Moving on now to the Buccaneers continuing to overhaul their offense. They brought in LaShawn McCoy for the veterans minimum. And this one doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's not because I don't think McCoy is good anymore. I mean, I think that's true, but I'm not saying it doesn't make sense because of that. He'd make sense as a bounce-back candidate on another team. But the Buccaneers don't need another running back. They have Ronald Jones. They have Keyshawn Vaughn. They have Dare Ogunbowale. Granted, I'm not a big fan of Ronald Jones. And God only knows what you're going to get from Ogunbowale. He's more of a receiving back anyway. But this just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. He's going to have to fight for playing time. For the Buccaneers, I guess it makes sense. It's a low-risk, high-reward move. But for McCoy, it makes no sense. Maybe he's thinking he can get a free ring out of it. I know he won one last year, but you can never have too many. But if he's looking for real playing time, I don't think he's going to get it. I want Keyshawn Vaughn to get a lot of run this year. I'm excited to see what he can do. Him and Tyler Johnson, I think if they're given the opportunity, will thrive in Bruce Arians' system that's now being quarterbacked by the GOAT. The last football signing that I want to talk about is the Saints bringing in Nigel Bradham. It makes a ton of sense. While he's not going to get a lot of playing time because he's behind Kiko Alonso, he will slot in as the backup. Alonso is injury prone. Craig Robertson really isn't that good. He's okay. He's a decent backup, but Bradham is a lot better. He brings championship DNA. He's been really good throughout his whole career. This makes a ton of sense for the Saints. I like it a lot. Alright, it's time to finish up decades of dumbass decisions. That's right, I'm finishing it up today. This isn't what I'd be doing in a perfect world, but I really don't want to do it next week because basketball will be in full swing, so will hockey, so will baseball. There just isn't going to be enough time for it, and this is the kind of thing where I can't take a break from it. Going Baseball Hall of Faming, I can. This Day in Sports History, I can. And Mount Rushmore's, I can. This, I can't. So I'm going to finish it up today. We're on the Elite Eight, and I'll start with the Yankees. It's the 04 ALCS versus the 03 World Series. 2004, the Yankees had the worst postseason collapse in baseball history. Mariano Rivera on to close the game. In Game 4, everyone's thinking this is it. The Yankees are going to sweep. They're going to win another pennant. And the Red Sox come back. Dave Roberts etching his name into the list of people that I hate Game 5, David Ortiz did the same thing. And Game 6 and Game 7, they got outclassed. The lowlights being the bloody sock and Javier Vasquez giving up a grand slam on the first pitch that he threw in relief of Kevin Brown. That's going up against the 03 World Series. No one was picking the Florida Marlins in that series. They had a bunch of nobodies. It was Ivan Rodriguez and blank. No one knew anyone else on the team, but they got outclassed. The Yankees were garbage. Josh Beckett, Brad Penny, and Carl Pavano were insane. They pitched the Marlins to a World Series win. A World Series that, on paper, they had no chance being competitive in. Like I said, I was there for Game 1. I remember Nick Johnson being picked off third base. And I remember watching Game 6 with my father at home, and we're both just shaking our heads like, this can't be happening. There's no way. There's no way on earth that they're really going to lose this series. Oh my god, they really lost this World Series. But the 04 ALCS is worse. You blow a 3-0. The only team in baseball history to do it. And to make matters worse, you do it against the Red Sox, your arch rival. A team that hadn't won anything in 86 years. The way they lost was so painful. The 04 ALCS is going to represent the Yankees in the Final Four. That is the worst moment in Yankees history. Moving over now to the Islanders, we have the 1989 to 1994 NHL drafts versus the 2000 NHL draft. I did not do that on purpose. It's kind of interesting how that works out. The Islanders mangled their 6 first-rounders in that time period. 1989, with the 2nd overall pick, they picked Dave Chizowski. The year after that, with the 6th overall pick, they picked Scott Sissons. And the year after that, with the 4th overall pick, they picked Scott LaChance. I've said this before, I'll say it again, the reason you've never heard of them is because they are some of the biggest busts in NHL draft history. 1992, with the 5th overall pick, they picked Darius Kasparaitis. He had a long career, but I never really liked him. I just didn't think he was that good. I remember watching him with the Rangers. I've watched old Islander games with him. The Islanders could have done a lot better than Kasparaitis, I'll tell you that. Specifically, they could have had Corey Stillman, Sergei Gonchar, or Martin Straka. In 1993, the Islanders go on the magical run. They end up with the 23rd overall pick, and they get it right with Todd Bertuzzi. And the pick afterwards, the 40th overall pick, they picked Brian McCabe. They got those picks right. Unfortunately, they wouldn't spend a lot of time with the Islanders, as they were traded along with a 3rd rounder that later became Jarkko Ruutu to the Canucks for Trevor Linden. I'd rather have Bertuzzi, McCabe, and Ruutu than Linden. And in 1994, with the 9th overall pick, the Islanders selected Eric Lindros's younger brother, Brett. It's easy to see where all the talent in that family went. That's going up against the 2000 NHL draft. Mike Milbury made 3 decisions in a span of, at most, 24 hours that would set the Islanders back about 15 years. He traded Olli Jokinen and Roberto Luongo to the Panthers for Mark Parrish and Oleg Kavasha with the 1st overall pick in the 2000 draft, after clearing a spot for him as goalie of the future. Rick DiPietro was taken over Danny Heatley and Marian Gaborik. DiPietro had some good seasons, but he got the massive 15-year, $67.5 million contract. Never lived up to it. The Islanders are still paying him. Fortunately, it doesn't count against the cap because he was amnestied. I remember where I was when he was amnestied. I was at Target Field, screaming my head off because I was so happy, and Paul Molitor gave me a look like I was crazy. That's a true story. The Islanders also had the 5th overall pick in that draft. They picked Raffi Torres, one spot ahead of Scott Hartnell. The 2000 NHL draft is worse, though, because if you go down the list of guys that the Islanders could have taken, yeah, there are some notable players there. Guys like Bill Guerin and Martin Brodeur and Sergei Gonchar. But you also have some average players like Corey Stillman and Jeff Friesen. They would have been better picks, but they weren't as impactful as Luongo, Jokinen, Hartnell, and Heatley or Gabrick. The 3 decisions that Mike Milbury made at the 2000 NHL draft are directly responsible for their mediocrity throughout the 2000s. It's just that simple. So that is the worst moment in Islanders history. It'll be going up against either Bill Belichick resigning or John Idzik. Belichick obviously resigned on a napkin after he was the designated successor to Bill Parcells. Belichick goes on to become one of, if not the greatest coach in NFL history. And John Idzik, in his 2 years with the Jets, did very few things right. Eric Decker was a good signing. Bruno Giacomini was okay, but he was abysmal in the draft. Dee Milliner was a bust. Calvin Pryor was a bust. Geno Smith was predictably a bust. The Idzik 12, only one of them in Quincy Enunwa had a really, really good career. I understand that Idzik also picked Sheldon Richardson, but it doesn't make up for him standing pat in free agency. I mean, the decisions he made in 2014, I'm still having a tough time getting over. Darrell Revis, Dominique Rogers-Cromartie, Alteron Werner, Brandon Flowers, etc., etc., etc. I mean, it was terrible. Some of the guys that the Jets were trotting out there at cornerback had no business being NFL cornerbacks. Antonio Allen, Ellis Lankster. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. That is worse than Belichick resigning to me. The reason being, I just felt Idzik resigning a lot more personally. You know, I remember it more. I remember sitting through some of those games, like the Bills games and the Chargers game and the Bengals game. You know, they were terrible. Belichick resigning, you know, nothing was stopping the Jets from being good after that. They just mangled what they did afterwards. Al Groh was good for his 1 year, but then he bolted for Virginia. Herm Edwards was good. I liked Herm Edwards, but Chad Pennington kept getting hurt. Eric Mangini was dreadful. It's more on that than it is Belichick resigning. Yeah, Belichick resigning hurts. The Jets could have been the Patriots, but Idzik is a lot more concrete. Finishing up the Elite Eight, we have the Boston Celtics trade versus the 2009 to 2010 off seasons. Here's the one thing I don't like about this, and I've been thinking about this a lot. The 2009 to 2010 off seasons isn't the second worst moment in Nets history. It's the saga of centers. That was the true Elite Eight matchup. One thing that I kept looking at is, where's the 02 finals loss? Where's the 03 finals loss? It's in the saga of centers. The 2004 Eastern Conference semifinals is listed separately because Ben Wallace was a big part of that, but it was also guys like Chauncey Billups, Tayshaun Prince, and Richard Hamilton. 02 and 03, it really boiled down to the centers. Kobe was great. Tony Parker was great. Manu Ginobili was great. But Tim Duncan and Shaquille O'Neal really killed the Nets. That and guys like Jamie Fike and Evan Eschmeyer and Mickey Moore, Jason Collins, Nenad Kristich, that was painful. It wasn't until Brook Lopez that they got it sorted out. That's the second worst moment in Nets history. It's not the 2009 to 2010 off seasons, where the Nets traded Vince Carter, gave him away to the Magic along with Ryan Anderson. It's not the 12 and 70 season. It's not getting screwed out of John Wall. It's not positioning yourself as a big player in free agency and then ending up with Jordan Farmar, Anthony Morrow, Travis Outlaw, and Johan Petro. It's the saga of centers. It's seeing the lack of quality big man play really being the seminal reason for why you never won an NBA title. So the Boston Celtics trade has to be worse. Pierce, Garnett, Jason Terry, and DJ White for control of 4 Nets first rounders? Yeah, it's worse. So the Final Four is all set. The 04 ALCS versus the Boston Celtics trade is where I'll start it off. I've been on record as saying that the Boston Celtics trade could be worse for the Nets. Not for how they ended up afterwards, but the Celtics need to win with the guys who they still have from that trade. James Young is no longer with the team. Kyrie Irving is on the Nets. They have to win with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. And until they do, the trade is terrible. Don't get me wrong. But it's not the Louisiana Purchase heist that it's been cracked up to be. The 2004 ALCS is worse. It is the worst postseason loss in baseball history. I don't care who you root for. Until another team blows a 3-0 to their arch rival who hasn't won anything in over 80 years, nothing's going to be worse. On the other side of things, we have the 2000 NHL draft versus John Idzik. John Idzik was only there for 2 years. And you can recover from 2 bad seasons if you have a great GM. Unfortunately, the Jets replaced John Idzik with Mike Maccagnan. Mike Maccagnan was dreadful. So the Jets felt the ill effects of Idzik for a really, really long time. The 2000 NHL draft, Yashin spent more than 2 years with the Islanders. DiPietro is still haunting the Islanders, and he was drafted in 2000. Mark Parrish spent more than 2 years with the Islanders. Oleg Kavasha was cracked up to be the next big thing. He was a solid third liner. That's all he was. The 2000 NHL draft is worse than John Idzik. So that sets up a battle between my 2 favorite teams. I did not do that on purpose. The 2000 NHL draft versus the 2004 ALCS. Here's the thing. When you look back at the annals of Yankee history and baseball history, you're always going to see the '04 ALCS. It's the biggest black mark in the prestigious history of the Yankees. The 2000 NHL draft, yes, it's a black mark for the Islanders, but there have been worse decisions than Rick DiPietro being taken first overall. The contract is what made it terrible, but DiPietro actually had some seasons where he was one of the best goalies in the NHL. And he's also a really nice guy, by the way. There are worse decisions than passing on Scott Hartnell for Raffi Torres. There aren't too many trades that are worse than Luongo and Jokinen for Parrish and Kavasha. But if I'm choosing between that one terrible decision to make that trade versus the '04 ALCS, an outlier, there are other bad NHL trades. The Bruins giving away Chris Versteeg to the Blackhawks. The Canadiens giving Mike Ribeiro away to the Stars. The Maple Leafs trading Tuukka Rask for Andrew Raycroft. Those come close to the Luongo and Jokinen trade. Nothing comes close to the 2004 ALCS. That is worse. We have a winner. The 2004 ALCS is the worst moment that I have ever had happen to one of my 4 favorite sports teams. On Monday, it's hockey time. The playoffs are underway. The best playoffs in all of sports. I'm going to break down every game. I'm going to recap every game. It's going to be hard, but I'm going to do it. Because it's that important. Now, you know what? I want to do it. Because I'm going to be locked into every game, and I want to share my opinions with you. Maybe some baseball, maybe some basketball, but definitely hockey. You'll also get a New York Yankees show later that day. Until Monday, I am Jacob Valk saying that Y is for Young, the magnificent sigh. People batted against him, but I never knew why.